"Move in with me," Caleb Morgan told his evicted neighbor. She looked at him and said, "That's not funny." It wasn't a joke. Under a blinding winter sun, one locked door pulled him into a quiet war with a man who believed he controlled the entire block, and nearly shattered the life Caleb built for his daughter. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, have you ever stood up to someone abusing their power, even when it risked your own stability? And where are you watching from? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real emotional stories. Let's begin. Sunlight turned the snow into glitter, pretty enough to make you forget winter could still bite. Caleb Morgan noticed the sparkle the moment he pulled his work van into the alley behind his duplex. Clear blue sky, crisp air, the kind of bright Chicago afternoon that made people smile for no reason, and then he saw the boxes. They were stacked on the porch next door like someone had dumped a life and walked away. A lamp with a crooked shade. A rolled-up rug tied with twine. A framed sketch half-wrapped in a towel. And at the center of it all stood Ava Bennett, blonde hair tucked into a knit beanie, cheeks pink from cold and anger, a black coat cinched tight like armor. She tried her key again. Click, nothing. Ava's jaw tightened. She knocked once, twice, then harder, as if the door owed her an apology. Caleb didn't rush. He didn't shout. He just crossed the short stretch of snowy sidewalk the way a man moved when he didn't have the luxury of panic. "Locked out?" he asked. Ava turned fast, eyes sharp, taking him in, work boots dusted with sawdust, flannel shirt, hands with small cuts that looked earned. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked insulted. "My lease isn't up," she said. "But Travis Collins decided it's more convenient if I don't exist." Caleb had heard that name before. Travis was the property manager who handled everything for half the block, repairs that never got fixed, fees that appeared like magic, conversations that ended with tenants feeling smaller than when they started. Caleb glanced at the door. New lock. Shiny. Freshly installed. "That's illegal," he said simply. Ava let out a breath that wasn't a laugh. "Try telling him. He did it while I was grabbing groceries. Then he texted me, 'Pick a time to collect your belongings.' Like he was doing me a favor." She held up her phone. Caleb didn't ask to see it, didn't need to. The scene was loud enough. Across the street, a sedan idled. Dark windows. A driver pretending not to watch. Caleb's stomach tightened the way it always did when trouble had witnesses. "Is that him?" he asked. Ava's eyes flicked to the car. "Maybe. He likes an audience." Caleb thought of Lily, 8 years old, coming to his place in 2 days. Thought of her backpack by the door, her routine, her need for predictable walls. He'd built his life like his furniture, measured, reinforced, no unnecessary risk. And yet Ava's belongings sat in the snow, the sun sparkling over them like this was normal. Caleb walked up the porch steps and tried the knob himself. Locked solid. He stepped back, looked at Ava's boxes again, then at her face, bruised not in skin, but in pride. He heard himself speak before he could overthink it. "I've got an empty guest unit," he said. "Attached to my duplex. It's clean. Warm. Door locks." Ava blinked once, as if she'd misheard. Caleb kept his voice calm. "Temporary. Until you figure out your next move." For a second, the bright day felt too quiet. Even the city seemed to hold its breath. Ava's gaze searched his face for the catch. "What do you want?" she asked. Caleb's answer came without performance. "Nothing." That was when the sedan across the street rolled forward a few feet, slow, deliberate. And Caleb realized this wasn't just a landlord being cruel. This was someone making sure Ava had nowhere to go. Ava noticed it too. Her fingers tightened around her phone. Then she said, almost under her breath, "He found me." Caleb didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. But he knew one thing, if he walked away now, Lily would grow up in a world where good men watched and did nothing. And Caleb Morgan wasn't going to teach his daughter that lesson. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a spare key, and held it out. "Come inside," he said. "Before the sun drops." Ava stared at the key like it weighed more than metal. Then, carefully, like trust was a fragile object, she took it. And behind them, the sedan's engine stayed running. Ava stepped into the guest unit like she expected it to bite her. It was small but clean, one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, a living room that smelled faintly of pine and fresh paint. Caleb kept it ready the same way he kept everything ready, like life might swing a hammer at you any day. He flipped on the heat and set a mug under the kettle without asking what she drank. Practical first. Questions later. Ava didn't sit. She walked the room's perimeter, eyes scanning corners, windows, locks, counting exits the way some people counted blessings. Caleb pretended not to notice. Outside, the winter sun still poured through the blinds, turning the pale walls warm. Chicago looked harmless from here, snow sparkling, clear sky, people in scarves laughing like the world wasn't full of sharp edges. Ava finally stopped near the window and peeked through a sliver of curtain. The sedan was gone. But her shoulders didn't relax. "You can leave whenever you want," Caleb said. "No strings." Ava turned. "That's what worries me." Caleb frowned. She gave a small, humorless smile. "Men like Travis don't like loose ends. They don't like people who can just walk away." Caleb leaned against the doorframe, careful not to crowd her. "Then we don't let him write your ending." Ava studied him again, like she was trying to decide if he was naive or rare. "Why'd you help me?" she asked. Caleb's first instinct was to give the safe answer, because it was right. But he'd learned that right didn't pay bills, and it didn't protect kids from heartbreak. He looked down at his hands, scarred knuckles, sawdust under nails, and thought of Lily's laugh filling his workshop every other week. "My daughter's coming in 2 days," he said. "I want her to grow up thinking people aren't disposable." Ava's expression softened for a brief second, then hardened again, like she caught herself feeling anything. "She lives here?" Ava asked. "Every other week," Caleb said. 8 years old. Lily. Ava nodded like she was filing that information under important. "Okay," she said. "Then I'll be invisible. I won't disrupt anything." Caleb didn't like that word, invisible, because he'd spent years watching his own needs become invisible after his divorce. He knew what it did to a person. "You're not a disruption," he said. "You're a neighbor who got shoved." Ava exhaled, slow. "Fine. Temporary." Caleb's mouth twitched. Temporary. But the word didn't land clean. Not in the warm air of the guest unit, with her boxes stacked like a life paused mid-sentence. That evening, Caleb helped carry the rest of her things from the porch next door. The lock stared at them like an insult. Ava snapped photos, door, lock, boxes, time-stamped, her movements efficient, controlled. Caleb noticed something else as he lifted a heavy suitcase. A scrap of paper slid from the side pocket, creased, worn, handled too many times. Ava snatched it before he could see, but not before he caught the top line. Case #17. A police report. Ava shoved it back into the suitcase as if it burned. "Old paperwork," she said quickly. Caleb didn't press, but the knowledge settled in his chest like a nail. Ava Bennett wasn't just dealing with a bad landlord. She was running from something that had a file number. That night, Caleb returned to his workshop in the back, his sanctuary. Rows of custom cabinets in progress. The smell of cedar. Tools aligned like soldiers. His phone buzzed. A city email notification. Zoning violation notice, action required within 48 hours. Caleb stared at it, pulse climbing. He hadn't filed any new permits. He hadn't changed his setup. The shop had been inspected last year. The notice felt less like bureaucracy and more like a threat delivered in official ink. He stepped outside. The air was so clear it almost hurt to breathe. Across the street, the same dark sedan sat again, parked legally this time, as if someone wanted to remind Caleb how powerless legal could be. Caleb's jaw tightened. He didn't know what game Travis Collins was playing. But now Caleb was on the board. Inside the guest unit, a light flicked on. Ava stood at the window, watching the street, face pale in the glow. She didn't have to say a word. Caleb understood. Temporary wasn't a feeling. Temporary was a battlefield. And winter, bright as it looked, was about to get cold. The notice gave Caleb 48 hours. 48 hours to prove his workshop wasn't illegal. 48 hours to protect the only stable thing Lily had left. The irony wasn't lost on him, the brightest winter week of the year, sun blazing over snow like glass, and yet his foundation felt like it had cracked overnight. Ava didn't panic. She sat at Caleb's kitchen table the next morning with her laptop open, sleeves pushed up, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. The sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating stacks of paperwork Caleb had never needed to think about before. Zoning category, she asked. Mixed residential commercial. It was approved when I bought the duplex. Conditional use permit. In the file cabinet. Ava's fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. He's not filing random complaints, she said. He's targeting technicalities. Caleb poured coffee into 2 mugs. Why? Ava looked up at him, eyes sharp. Because Travis Collins doesn't care about rent money. He cares about control. There it was again, that wordless history hovering behind her voice. Lily arrived that afternoon, bundled in a red coat, curls escaping her knit hat. She burst into the house like winter couldn't touch her. Dad! It's so bright outside. She laughed, kicking snow off her boots. Then she froze when she saw Ava standing by the counter. Caleb knelt. Lily, this is Ava. She's staying in the guest unit for a little while. Ava crouched to Lily's level, not too close, not too far. Hi. I heard you like books. Lily's suspicion flickered into curiosity. Do you? I design rooms, Ava said. But the best ones always have reading corners. That did it. By evening, the 3 of them were in Caleb's workshop office, sketching ideas for a small nook by the window, cushions, shelves, fairy lights. Lily's laughter bounced off the wooden beams. Caleb watched Ava work, precise, patient, never dismissing Lily's ideas. She wasn't chaos. She was structure disguised as creativity. The next morning came fast. Inspection day. The sky was painfully blue. Snow sparkled like a lie. The city inspector arrived at 9 sharp. Clipboard. Neutral expression. Travis Collins arrived right behind him, smile tight, coat too expensive for someone who claimed to manage properties. Routine follow-up, Travis said smoothly. Just making sure everything's compliant. Caleb felt the urge to swing a hammer at something, but he kept his voice steady. Ava stepped forward before Travis could continue. We welcome the inspection, she said calmly. All documentation is organized by category, permits, prior approvals, and tax records. Travis blinked. The inspector began his walkthrough. Measurements. Photos. Questions. Ava answered each one with crisp references to municipal code. Section numbers. Amendments. Dates. At one point, Travis interrupted. The commercial machinery is registered under Ordinance 12, 4B, Ava replied smoothly, sliding a paper across the workbench. Approved last March. The inspector examined it. Nodded. Caleb watched Travis's confidence flicker. Then Ava added, almost casually, we also contacted the property owner this morning. Margaret Henderson confirmed she was unaware of any authorized eviction or complaint filing. Travis's smile cracked. The inspector's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Speaker mode. A sharp, older woman's voice filled the workshop. This is Margaret Henderson. I did not authorize Mr. Collins to change locks or file harassment complaints. His contract is terminated effective immediately. Silence. Even the sunlight seemed to pause mid-air. Travis's face drained of color. You can't. I just did, Margaret replied. Return all keys by noon. The line went dead. The inspector cleared his throat. Mr. Morgan, your shop is compliant. Complaint dismissed. Just like that. The threat collapsed. Travis shot Ava a look, something darker than anger. You think this is over, he muttered under his breath. Ava didn't flinch. It was over the moment you put it in writing. Caleb stepped beside her, not in front, not behind. Beside. As Travis walked away, Caleb felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not relief. Partnership. That night, after Lily fell asleep curled in her half-finished reading nook, Caleb and Ava stood in the quiet kitchen. Snow reflected moonlight into the room. The world looked peaceful again. You didn't have to fight that hard, Caleb said quietly. Ava looked at him. I don't run anymore. The words carried weight, history, maybe pain. Caleb nodded slowly. What began as temporary shelter had become something else. Choice. And for the first time in years, Caleb realized stability didn't only come from control. Sometimes it came from standing shoulder to shoulder with someone who refused to be pushed. Outside, the street was empty. But neither of them felt watched anymore. For 2 days, the street stayed quiet. No sedan. No notices. No footsteps that didn't belong. Winter settled into something almost gentle. Sunlight streamed across the snow, bright and clean, as if nothing ugly had ever happened there. Caleb wanted to believe it was over. He should have known better. It started with a knock at the workshop door just after noon. Not Lily's rhythm. Not Ava's. 3 hard strikes. Caleb wiped his hands on a cloth and stepped outside. 2 men stood near the fence, suits, polished shoes sinking slightly into the snow. Not city inspectors. Not neighbors. Mr. Morgan, one asked. Caleb nodded. We're here regarding a prior report connected to Ms. Ava Bennett. Caleb's spine stiffened. Report? He asked carefully. The taller man held up a folder. Case 1742. Filed 18 months ago. Caleb's memory flashed to the scrap of paper he'd seen slip from Ava's suitcase. Case number 17. She didn't mention anything, Caleb said evenly. That's understandable, the man replied. The case involved allegations against a property management executive. It was closed due to insufficient evidence. Executive. Caleb didn't like the way the word felt. And now? Caleb asked. New documentation surfaced during the complaint review against Mr. Travis Collins. Similar patterns. Lock changes. Intimidation. Unauthorized entries. Caleb's jaw tightened. Are you saying this is bigger than him? He asked. The man exchanged a look with his partner. We're saying Ms. Bennett may not have been his first target. The air felt colder suddenly. What do you need from me? Caleb asked. Nothing, yet. But if she's staying here, you should know he may escalate. They handed Caleb a card and left without another word. Caleb stood there for a long time, the winter sun glaring off the snow like an accusation. He walked back inside slowly. Ava was in the kitchen with Lily, measuring fabric swatches for the reading nook curtains. Lily laughed at something Ava whispered. The scene looked normal. Safe. Caleb waited until Lily ran upstairs to grab colored pencils. He set the card on the counter. Ava saw it. Her hand stilled. "They came to you," she said quietly. "Yes." She inhaled, slow. No denial. No performance. "I filed a report last year," Ava said. Different building. Same tactics. He'd enter units without notice. Pressure tenants who complained. When I pushed back, my lease wasn't renewed. "And the case?" Caleb asked. "Closed." Her voice sharpened. He had better lawyers. Caleb studied her, not the composed exterior, but the tension under it. "You said he found you," Caleb reminded her. Ava nodded once. "I didn't think he'd bother. I moved neighborhoods. Changed firms. Kept my head down." Caleb's voice stayed level. "You shouldn't have to live like that." Ava's eyes flashed. "Women do." The honesty in it landed harder than anger. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Caleb said something he hadn't planned. "He doesn't scare me." Ava looked at him carefully. "He should. He'll come for what matters to you." Caleb didn't hesitate. "That's why I won't let him." There it was again, that quiet shift between them. Not savior. Not victim. Alliance. That evening, Caleb installed a new camera system around the duplex. Not paranoid. Prepared. Ava didn't argue. Instead, she brought out her own folder, thick, organized, documented. "If he escalates," she said, "we don't react emotionally. We respond legally." Caleb almost smiled. "You always this strategic." "Only when I'm done running." Lily came downstairs later, holding up a drawing. It showed 3 stick figures under a bright yellow sun. One tall. One medium. One small. Above them, in uneven letters. Home. Caleb swallowed something heavy in his throat. That night, as he locked the doors, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without greeting. A familiar voice slid through the speaker, smooth, controlled. "You're making this personal, Morgan." Caleb didn't ask who it was. "If you mean protecting my home," Caleb replied calmly, "then yes." A soft laugh on the other end. "You think she told you everything?" Caleb's pulse didn't change. "I know enough." There was a pause. Then the line went dead. Caleb stood in a quiet kitchen, snow glowing blue beyond the window. He wasn't afraid. But he understood now. This wasn't about rent. It was about power. And Caleb Morgan had just become inconvenient. Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully. In the guest unit, Ava's light remained on. And outside, somewhere beyond the reach of the street lamps, a man who hated losing was deciding his next move. The escalation came quietly. No broken windows. No shouting in the street. Just paperwork. A certified letter arrived 3 mornings later, delivered under a sky so clear it almost felt staged. Snow shimmered across the yard. Lily was inside finishing her cocoa before school. Caleb opened the envelope at the kitchen counter. Civil complaint, defamation and interference with contractual relations. Filed by Travis Collins. Caleb exhaled slowly. Ava read over his shoulder, expression sharpening but not breaking. "He's trying to intimidate," she said. "He thinks you'll step back to protect your business." Caleb folded the letter carefully. He miscalculated. That afternoon, Ava made 3 calls. The first, to Margaret Henderson, who had already begun auditing Travis's management history. The second, to a tenant advocacy attorney whose name Ava had kept from the closed case 18 months ago. The third, to someone Caleb hadn't expected. A journalist. You're going public? Caleb asked once she hung up. I'm done letting him operate in shadows, Ava replied. Patterns matter. So do witnesses. Caleb nodded once. He didn't need to be convinced. 2 days later, under a brilliant winter sun that made the city skyline look carved from glass, they sat in a downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The attorney laid out the facts calmly. Mr. Collins filed similar complaints against 3 prior tenants, she said. Each withdrew under pressure. But now we have documentation, termination from the property owner, and city inspection records. And the prior case? Caleb asked. The attorney met Ava's eyes. Reopening. The word felt solid. Not hopeful. Certain. By the following week, the story had surfaced in a local column, measured, factual, precise. No drama. Just records. Patterns. Travis tried one final move. He appeared outside the duplex that evening, hands in his coat pockets, posture relaxed as if he still owned the sidewalk. Caleb stepped out to meet him. The winter light was fading, but the sky still held a faint gold glow. You've complicated this, Travis said. Caleb kept his voice even. You did that when you changed her locks. Travis glanced toward the guest unit window. You think she stays? Caleb didn't look back. I don't decide for her. That answer seemed to unsettle Travis more than anger would have. This isn't over, Travis muttered. Caleb met his eyes without flinching. For you? Maybe not. For us? It is. Something in Caleb's steadiness, his refusal to posture, made Travis hesitate. Because bullies relied on reaction. And Caleb wasn't reacting. He was choosing. Within a month, the reopened case led to formal investigation. Margaret Henderson cooperated fully. Other tenants came forward. Travis Collins faded from the neighborhood like frost under sunlight. Not dramatically. Just inevitably. And then came the offer. Ava stood in the kitchen one bright morning, snow still lining the yard, holding a document. Margaret wants to sell the duplex, Ava said. Below market. She's restructuring. Caleb's brows lifted. And? Ava set the paper down. Co-tenants, she said softly. Caleb Morgan and Ava Bennett. Caleb stared at the document. For years, safety had meant control. Keeping his life contained. Predictable. Divided neatly into weeks and responsibilities. But stability had shifted. It wasn't distance that protected Lily. It was character. It was partnership. Upstairs, Lily's laughter drifted down as she rearranged books in her finished reading nook, cushions, shelves, soft lights glowing even in daylight. Ava waited quietly. Not pushing. Not retreating. Caleb picked up the pen. He signed. Not because he needed rescuing. Not because she did. But because together, they had faced pressure without folding. They had chosen integrity over intimidation. Outside, winter remained bright and sharp. Inside, 2 coffee mugs rested side by side on the counter. No longer mine and temporary. Just home. And in the living room, Lily called out. Dad. Ava. Come see. Caleb looked at Ava. She smiled, not guarded, not cautious. Certain. They walked toward the sound together. A house once divided by walls and fear now held something stronger than structure. It held decision. And what Caleb Morgan built with his hands had always been sturdy. But what he built with trust. That was built to last. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.